Part 1, A Girl Named Cinderella. Once upon a time a girl named Cinderella lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters. It was Cinderella who had to wake up each morning when it was still dark and cold to start the fire. Cinderella who cooked the meals. Cinderella who kept the fire going. The poor girl could not stay clean, from all the ashes and cinders by the fire. "What a mess you are," her two stepsisters laughed. That is why they called her Cinderella. One day, big news was announced in their village. It was time for the prince to find a bride, and the king and queen were going to have a ball. All of the young ladies of the land were invited to come. The stepsisters were wild with joy. They would wear their most beautiful gowns and fix their hair in the most splendid way. No doubt they would be the one to win the favor of the prince. Cinderella now had extra work to do. She had to sew two fabulous gowns for her stepsisters in the latest fashion. "Faster," shouted one stepsister. "You call that a dress?" screamed the other. "Oh, dear," said Cinderella. "When can I?" The stepmother marched into the room. "When can you what?" "Well," said the girl, "when will I have time to make my own dress for the ball?" "You," barked the stepmother. "Who said you were going to the ball? Did you hear that?" One stepsister rolled back with laughter. "Cinderella, going to the ball? Looking like that?" Her stepsisters roared with laughter. They'd never let that mess in the front door. Cinderella thought to herself, "I may look like a mess, but I am not a mess, not really, and if I could, I would go to the ball." Soon the big day came. Poofed and pampered, the stepmother and stepsisters were ready to leave for the big night. Part 2, The Big Party. A fine carriage arrived to pick them up. The stepmother and stepsisters hopped inside. "Goodbye," called Cinderella. "Have a good time." But the stepmother and stepsisters did not turn to respond. The carriage door shut and off they were, in a cloud of dust. "Ah," groaned Cinderella as the carriage clip-clopped down the cobblestone street. "If only there was a way for me to go to the ball, too." Then, poof! All of a sudden, in front of her stood a fairy. "You called," said the fairy. "I did," said Cinderella. "Who are you?" "Your fairy godmother, of course. I know what you wish, and I have come to grant it." "But," said Cinderella, "my wish is impossible." "Excuse me," said the fairy godmother in a huff. "Did I not just show up out of thin air?" "I suppose you did," said Cinderella. "Then let me be the one to say what is possible or not." "Well, all right," said Cinderella. She looked down at her dirty clothes. "But look at me. I cannot go to the ball." "You do look a bit of a mess, child," said the fairy godmother gently. "Even if I had something nice to wear," said the girl, "I would have no way to get there." "Dear me, all of that is possible," said the fairy. She tapped her wand on Cinderella's head. At once, Cinderella was perfectly clean. What's more, she was dressed in a beautiful blue gown. Her hair was set up high on her head in a golden band. "This is amazing," said Cinderella. "Who said I was done?" said the fairy godmother. She tapped her wand again. At once, a beautiful carriage came to be, with a driver and 4 white horses. "Am I dreaming?" said Cinderella, looking around her in astonishment. "It's as real can be," said the fairy godmother. "But there is one thing you must know." "What is that?" "The magic lasts only to midnight. At the stroke of midnight, it will be over. Everything will go back to how it was before." "Then I must be sure to leave the ball before midnight," said Cinderella. "Smart cookie," said the fairy godmother. She stepped back. "My work here is done." In a puff of smoke, the fairy godmother was gone. Cinderella looked around. Did that even happen? But there she was in a fine gown, with a golden band in her hair. And there were her driver and 4 horses. "Coming," called the driver. "I suppose it did," said Cinderella. She stepped into the carriage, and they were off. Part 3, The Ball. During the ball, the prince felt despondent. "Why do you have that sad look on your face?" the queen said to her son. "You would think you weren't at a royal ball your father and I are hosting just for you, so you can find a bride." "I know you and father are looking out for me," said the prince. Yet something was wrong. He had already met most of the young women at the ball, and after he said hello, there was nothing more to say. "Look!" Someone pointed to the front door of the ballroom, at the top of the stairs. All heads turned. Who was that lovely maiden stepping down the stairs? She held her head tall and stepped with grace and elegance. Who was she? No one knew. "There is something about that young lady," said the prince to himself. "I will ask her to dance." He walked over to Cinderella. "Have we met?" said the prince. "I am pleased to meet you now," said Cinderella with a bow. "I feel as if I know you," said the prince. "But of course, that's impossible." "Many things are possible," said Cinderella, "if you wish them to be true." "Do you really believe that?" said the prince. "I know it," said Cinderella. The prince felt a leap in his heart. He and Cinderella danced. When the song was over, they danced again. And then again. All the time they were talking and laughing. Soon the other maidens at the ball grew jealous. "Why is he staying dance after dance with her?" they said. "Give someone else a chance." How rude. But all the prince wanted to do was to stay with Cinderella. In fact, they danced so long that Cinderella did not see the clock. Part 4, The Clock Strikes. "Dong," struck the clock. Cinderella looked up. "Dong," rung the clock again. She turned to the clock. "Oh, my," she cried. "It's almost midnight." "Dong," called the clock. "Why does it matter?" said the prince. "The night is young." "Dong," rung the clock again. "I must go," said Cinderella. "Dong," went the clock. "But we just met," said the prince. "Dong," rung the clock. "I must go," said Cinderella. She ran to the steps. "Dong," cried the clock. "I cannot hear you," said the prince. "The clock is too loud." "Dong," rung the clock. "Goodbye," said Cinderella. They ran up the stairs as fast as she could. "Dong," went the clock. "Please, stop for a moment," said the prince. "Oh, dear," she said as one glass slipper fell off her foot on the stair. But Cinderella kept running. "Dong," said the clock. "Please wait a moment," said the prince. "Dong," rung the clock. "Goodbye." Cinderella turned one last time. She rushed out the door. Dong. The clock was quiet. It was midnight. "Wait," called the prince. He picked up her glass slipper and dashed out the door to follow her. He looked around but could not see her blue dress anywhere. "This is all I have left from her," he said, looking down forlornly at the glass slipper. He noticed that it was made in a special way, to fit a foot like none other. "Somewhere that young maiden has the other glass slipper," he said. "I will find her, and when I do, I will ask her to be my bride." Part 5, The Search. From village to village, and from cottage to cottage went the prince. One young woman after another tried to fit her foot inside the glass slipper. But none could fit. He asked if they had the other glass slipper. None did. And the prince moved on. At last the prince came to Cinderella's cottage. "He is coming," shrieked one stepsister as she looked out the window. "He is here, at the door right now," screamed the other stepsister. "Hush," hissed the stepmother. "He'll hear you. Now get ready. One of you must fit your foot in that slipper, no matter what it takes." The stepmother swirled around to face Cinderella. "Get out of my sight," she glowered. "Go to your room right now and stay there." The prince knocked. The stepmother flew open the door. Come in, she said in a sweet, sultry voice. I have 2 lovely daughters you must see. The first stepsister tried to fit her foot in the glass slipper. As hard as she tried, her foot could not squeeze in. The second stepsister tried to fit her foot inside, but no dice. And neither of them had the other glass slipper. Are there any other young women in the house? Said the prince. None, said the stepmother. Then I will take my leave, said the prince. Maybe there is one more, said Cinderella, stepping into the room. I thought you said there were no other young women here, said the prince. None who matter, ceded the stepmother. Come here, said the prince warmly. Cinderella stepped up to him. The prince got down on one knee and tried the glass slipper on her foot. It fit perfectly. Well, I suppose I have the pair back again, said Cinderella. And from her pocket she took out the other glass slipper. I knew it, he cried. You are the one. What? Shouted a stepsister. Not her, screamed the other stepsister. This cannot be, shrieked the stepmother. But it was too late. The prince looked into her eyes. He knew that this young woman was the very same one he had met and danced with, and loved talking to. He did not see the cinders in her hair or the ashes on her face. I have found you, he said. And I have found you, said Cinderella. And so Cinderella and the prince were married, and they lived happily ever after.